Welcome to Data Skeptic Machine Intelligence, our podcast series exploring contemporary topics in artificial general intelligence and large language models. In case you're not the developer type, let me tell you, getting access to these large language models and using them programmatically in your own code, it's shockingly easy. In the same way that you can go to ChatGPT or Bard or Bing and talk to these language models, you can just as well in most languages write about 1 or 2 lines of code and get the same response. But that way you can do whatever you want with it. Invent the next great software solution. Launch the next great social media platform. And although there's some really exceptional exceptions of people using these tools very well in solutions and products right now, it's fair to say it's early days. So in the next couple episodes, we're going to cover more about that deployment story. How are businesses adopting these technologies? What does it take to do that, to engineer that? Although I described it as quite easy, there's absolutely a few challenges. We'll get into that more right after this.
I'm Aaron Reich, and I'm Avanade's global CTO.
Hey, this is Priyanka here, and I am based out of Avanade, Southeast Asia, leading the AI IoT offerings, and I'm also the Microsoft MVP for AI.
And can you tell me a little bit about the company? What do you guys do?
Yeah, so Avanade is a services company. We are a joint venture between Accenture and Microsoft. So we serve clients and help them across all industries around strategy, technology enablement, and then really thinking about the customer and employee experiences and how that wraps around the technology of the business challenges and problems we're trying to solve.
Any technology in particular that's exciting right now you're working on?
There's this little thing called AI and generative AI. There's some new things that we are doing in the immersive space as well. And then there's a just ton of things happening from the data front.
And in terms of generative AI, I think people kind of get it. We've all tried ChatGPT, but could you share a few more details, maybe some ones you're excited about where generative AI can be used?
No, actually, we have had a very successful go live with one of the largest oil and gas companies with Southeast Asia, and that's the poster boy for Gen AI implementation in production. And using the security of Azure OpenAI, it has been incredibly, rewarding for them to implement generative AI on their own data platforms, documents. So they have immense documents which are, just lying across disparate data sources, unstructured, semi-structured images, videos, audio clips, and the kind of productivity gain with the help of generative AI, being able to find insights, nuanced communications from the documents was another level altogether. So the productivity boost was more than around 40% across their enterprises within a span of 6 to 8 months. Previous to Gen AI, the same experience was like not too much great for end users, or the kind of productivity gains was not too great. And cut to Gen AI and the immense, phenomenal transformation which they saw. Even for us, without the new state of the art models coming in, right? So that time when we went live, which was in late August, GPT-4 was not yet available. So even with the lesser so-called powerful models, even with those, they could see phenomenal exponential productivity and UX gains.
Could you expand on the core of where that 40% improvement comes from? Like what actually was saved?
Right. So a lot of, and this is coming from the exact verbatim quote of the CIO and the CDO of that organization. She wanted to democratize the data, right, and give the data power to the hands of the end users. So a lot of the end users, they spend their time searching for very mundane queries, right, like where can I find this part, how can I fix this failure, because a lot of that information resides with the field engineers. It's not well documented. It is just based on the experience of those field engineers. So how to free this data from the confines of the user's knowledge or somewhere lying in legacy documents, and actually liberalize the data to empower the end users. So the routine searches itself, where people spend a lot of time over and over again getting wrong results or searching the same thing, that itself, those gains were so phenomenal. And then again, another productivity area was where you try to learn from past experiences. So was this done somewhere earlier where, instead of reinventing something, can I reuse, can I base my new implementation on my past learnings? So that is another area where it kind of had tremendous gains. And again, incident management, so searching for incident tickets and resolutions, so that was another area. So the searching time, the kind of experience they got from their past learnings, so that is the areas where they found a lot of gains. And processing time also, document processing with the help of Gen AI. Just to baseline a few statistics, previous to Gen AI, let's say 500 documents used to take 3 months, and with Gen AI, 500 documents take 3 hours.
Wow. Well, I couldn't read 500 documents in 3 hours. Does that get QA'd or what? How does it work now in this new world?
No, it's like before the documents are exposed out for question answering, you need to process the documents. And the information from the documents is, stored into different knowledge stores. So you could have the documents transform into knowledge graphs, or some of the information from documents actually extracted out as images for thumbnails, or some of the unstructured information going into cognitive search indexes. So with the help of generative AI, it is so much easier with the help of just natural language prompts to sort of teach the model, like, oh, given this text, this is the kind of ontology I want to extract out of it, and this is the kind of knowledge graphs I want to build on top of it. It's just so much simpler.
Yeah, there's another client example that we've got who is in the retail space, and for their frontline workers, so those retail store associates, we, in a very similar type of way, looked across almost 21,000 different documents that they had and different types of data sets. So think Salesforce data, other corporate enterprise data, and created a experience for those retail store associates to be able to quickly get access to information that before they had to hop through 2 or 3 different systems to be able to do. And now we've got sort of this really kind of easy user interface to be able to extract that information and knowledge for them.
Does an idea like that, does someone come to you and say, we think this could be done? Or do they come to you saying, what can we do with these new technologies?
We see both sides of that. We have seen from some of the early adopters in different industries, different models that we are working on, or maybe use cases, and then how we are actually sharing those. Because I'm a big believer that in this space that we're in right now, I mean, let's just reflect and step back for a second. Like, we are only sort of 1 year into OpenAI and the release of ChatGPT. So as much as there's been in the technology space specifically, a lot of conversation around what do we do? What's the value? How do we see this? I am a believer that we should be really open about, well, what's working and what's not working. And as a part of that, then we're able to go to a bank and say, hey, in Europe, we were working with this particular bank and they were thinking about these different use cases in their parts of the business, and share that same kind of theme or general areas with, say, a bank in a different part of the world, to be able to go, well, this is how they're doing it. Now, obviously, each organization is unique and they have their own challenges around their own data structures to be able to make some of these things happen. But it truly is democratizing this in some way, where we're doing this yin and yang of sharing between, hey, they're thinking of a problem, we've seen some of that problem, and how do we kind of help each other go solve that?
The space is evolving pretty quickly. What challenges does that present in terms of deciding to roll out now or maybe wait a few months and see what's out there?
Let's use Microsoft Copilot as a great example here. Just look at the last sort of 8 months of the features that Microsoft has rolled out from the initial announcement of what was M365 Copilot, and all the functionality that sits in there to be able to provide these services to each of us as a user of, let's just call it, the different M365 suite of Office products. I fundamentally believe that Copilot is a significant change that any of us that's sort of working today has seen probably since the 1980s with the introduction of IBM and the spreadsheet. Like, it is fundamentally going to change the way that we all work, enabling us with a tool And Copilot is much more powerful than a tool, but enabling us sort of with that to be able to then just turn it on and kind of give it to you and then you're able to use it. That's all great, but how do we make sure that there's something enduring that's there and that there's value that's a part of it? And so part of our approach is actually thinking about the people side of this first. And how do we then go figure out, so like in our own rollout and in the work that we do with clients and try to get them to think a little bit like us in this way, which is where you're kind of putting people before the AI. And how do we make sure that we are thinking through the communication and the actual change management that has to come as a part of this? Do we even have the right culture in place for everyone feels comfortable to be able to utilize these tools in various different ways? And so I think there's a ton of interesting things underneath that's enabling this, but we've got to also make sure that we are truly thinking about us as individuals and how we're taking ourselves along this journey that is truly kind of a change in how we are going to do our work.
Were you given an AI problem to solve with too little data or too little time? I know I have. Web AI hears you. They're a team of AI and ML researchers and practitioners who've created Navigator, an IDE designed to streamline the MLOps process to get your project across the finish line in hours and days instead of weeks and months. With state-of-the-art architectures like deep detection and attention steering, you can build object detectors and classifiers as well as expert conversational agents. You own your models and data forever, and can even train and run locally to ensure privacy and security. When you're done tweaking, integrate your creations effortlessly into production-ready solutions, full code like I like, or drag and drop. Deploy to any environment, at the edge or the cloud. From ad hoc proof of concepts to full-scale enterprise deployments, Navigator has you covered. Get early access at webai.com/dataskeptic.
So within the last 4 or 5 months, we have seen models getting more and more ever powerful. So we started with the GPT-3, then there was GPT 3.5 Turbo, now it's GPT-4, 4 Turbo, GPT-4 Vision. And we know that this is going to keep on getting, more and more powerful, right? So probably what I was trying to do for image searches a couple of months ago, that is now offloaded to GPT-4 Vision. So which is why a lot of customers also want to wait and watch regarding the evolutions. So most of them we see are in a stage where they want to experiment, so but stay at the POC or MVP level. And while productionalizing, they want to keep an eye out on the developments. And that also goes not only for models, but also for the hardware. The compute is the most essential for all these models to perform the way they do today. So the kind of hardware changes also the offerings around different compute instances, different on-prem, open source, open source models, open source small language models, large language models. So there's a lot of paradigm shifts happening out there, and which is why a lot of customers are not in a hurry to take the next production step. So they want to experiment, they want to get a feel of things on the ground, but then they also want to wait for those huge announcements to be made before deciding their next step to go into production.
We're at a time of kind of a fundamental architecture shift, and if I just look at large organizations and the IT infrastructure that exists and the applications that are there, the way we've been thinking and designing this, Copilots bring a change in that. Because, so I'll use a sort of an Avanade example of our rollout of Microsoft Copilot. 4 years ago, our IT group built for our own employees a chatbot that then, basic kind of questions like, how do I reset my password? How much vacation do I have left? Those types of things. Okay, it was not the greatest user experience. It had its challenges, but it was the beginning of kind of what we saw of kind of where this would go. Turn that to what we're doing right now with Microsoft Copilot, where Microsoft has the ability to make connectors to different data sets. So for our instance of Microsoft Copilot, we have a connector that we turned on to ServiceNow because all of our IT knowledge base articles are based in ServiceNow. Now I can just go to the team's Copilot and ask a question of, hey, I forgot my password, and it surfaces the knowledge base article from ServiceNow, and we didn't code hardly anything to make that happen. Whereas look what we did just a couple of years ago. While we're talking architecture, the underpinning of all this is data. Traditionally, we have thought about any product or service that's being built. We have our, and again, I'm coming from larger enterprise sort of perspective on this. We have our kind of core enterprise data, our CRM, our ERP, our other kind of system data that we have. And then all these things that we do around our collaboration and the data of what Microsoft calls kind of the Microsoft graph, around our documents, we really kind of treat those things separately. We do figure out the integration that has to happen around those, but really to realize the things from a generative AI, where Copilot is going, and actually this evolution of work that I was talking about, you really need to start joining this data up because you've got this context of all of the applications and the ontology of the things that we do within our own business. You then have all the things, if I just use myself as an example, all the documents and the meetings that I am in and the emails I am sending. And then if I want to actually complete some tasks, the marrying of those two is almost the holy grail. And so how do we actually begin to bring those together? And Copilot Studio is the beginning of kind of seeing how this vision sort of is there. But I go, we're super early sort of in that journey. And I think it's going to, we're with these early adopters. And so how does somebody a year from now who's doing all their planning think about, do I have the right data foundation in place? Do I have the data where it needs to be at the speed that it needs to be? And how am I actually thinking about my people and my graph data combined with kind of this enterprise data and these new products and services that we want to build? I think it's a super exciting time, but also a challenging time because we're in not just change of work, but we're in change of habit of how we've designed things before.
When you're talking to people about strategy, no one's going to say our strategy is to stay away from AI. Everyone wants to get into
sure.
AI.
Yeah.
But what are the actual practical opportunities here today in 2023?
Back in January through, I'd say, March, April timeframe, in a lot of way of what Priyanka was saying, we have a lot of clients that were doing, all right, what's the use case that I want to try? And I'm going to do a lot of experimentation and kind of these proof of concepts to try to figure it out. Not really with a strategy in mind, just we want access, we kind of want to see and learn as a part of that. And I would say overall, we're probably at like 40% of clients today are still in this experimentation kind of POC kind of realm of the things they're doing, whereas back in February, that was probably like 90%. Over the summer, so I would say, kind of the May to July, August timeframe, there's actually a lot of clients that took a step back and go, okay, we are on, pick your favorite buzzword. I will just say our transformation journey, because there are actually a lot of clients that are on their way to get to the cloud. Some are not even kind of in the cloud yet, and then some are much further. So they all need to think about where they're at on that journey. I don't think of AI as a brand new transformation. It's a way to go, all right, in our strategy of what we're doing, where do we apply this new set of functionality that is at a scale we hadn't kind of thought about before and optimize our business in some way? Or look at a business process that maybe we can now reimagine in a way we hadn't been able to do that before. There's been a lot of work on like, well, what is our strategy? Kind of even at a board and sort of a CEO level that then has been assigned to, all right, there's some line of business leader who has a clear use case that they've done a business case around and has value, and they're actually designing and building that for scale. That work is kind of still happening and is going to happen over the next several months to years. But that, if I kind of put a percentage of, again, 40% kind of in experimentation, there's sort of probably right now about another 40% that are in this, like, we're kind of designing something that we're building for scale that utilizes generative AI to be able to do that. And they've got a strategy around it. That is not just a technology strategy, but it's a people and a change strategy as a part of that. A much smaller percentage is, so for the remaining kind of 10% or a little bit less than that, how do you begin to use Gen AI as a differentiator? That's where like the super early adopters are at the moment of going like, we see something, we're sitting on a lot of data, maybe how we monetize that data in a way we hadn't kind of thought about before. Do we maybe want to invest and build our own large language model or something around that and fine tune it a whole lot? I think that part we're going to see grow over the next 12 to 18 months. Some of them are waiting for stories. And I think we're so early in this journey that we haven't shared enough of what others are doing. And as we do that, we're going to start to go, oh, well, that's interesting. And then the majority of the organizations who are not kind of these early adopters will go, all right, this is how we're going to start to flow it into our business process in some way.
Well, the idea of a custom copilot is really appealing. Not only do I get the benefit of the native copilot, but somehow it knows the intricacies and nuances and dirty secrets of my organization. What does it take to get something like that built?
If I were to put the effort into perspective, earlier with the earlier versions of generative AI, somewhere around 4 to 6 months or 6 to 9 months to get into production. But then, depending on the kind of maturity your organization is in, so probably they are already onboarded the cloud journey and they have a decent data platform, in which case their runway is smaller, right? But then organizations who are on legacy platforms yet to grasp the power of a centralized data platform. So for them, the runway might be a slightly longer, because of the kind of processing power, because of the kind of intelligence and logical comprehension Gen AI brings in. What transformation could have taken us X amount of time is definitely reduced by half with the help of Gen AI. So organizations who are on legacy platforms are not too modernized. Still, if they want to look at significantly upgrading their platform and then building AI applications or custom copilots on top of that, with the help of the Gen AI processing power, they can look to significantly reduce the time for actually building these kind of applications. And custom copilots, again, you have variety of ways of bringing them into reality. So identify the data sources, identify the use cases. I think the use case and the goal for which you want to harvest that custom copilot is the most important thing. So as long as the organization is clear on what is the end result, the kind of productivity boost or the challenges they want to mitigate with the help of the custom copilot, it becomes easier for SIs like us to go and then actually help them, reach that end goal and build that custom copilot.
The way I like to think about where we're going with copilots is, think about when the iPhone was first released. It was not immediate, and I'm going to have my time frame wrong on this, but it sort of feels like maybe a year or two after the iPhone. That's really when Apple kind of created and bolstered the App Store. I look at copilots and what Microsoft is doing specifically as a whole new dev ecosystem. With that dev ecosystem, we are going to be in a spot where today we maybe call them plugins or custom copilots. I think a nice way to kind of think about it is we're just going to have these in-app experiences of a copilot and things that we are doing. The way I think it's going to come to fruition in the short term is in a way that there is an app store, and we saw this with the announcement about a week and a half ago from OpenAI, is that they're going to have, for lack of a better term, I don't know what they called it, but there's going to be a marketplace. That's a public type of marketplace, and I don't have all the details, and there may be some other things that they announce as a part of that, but I believe that there will be enterprise marketplace for an organization. So I'm just, to make it simple, let's just use Avanade as an example. We have a marketplace of custom copilots or plugins that exist, and then those will be by persona. So let's say we have someone in our finance organization who is using Excel. They're going to use Excel out of the box from Microsoft and the copilot that kind of comes with that. That's only going to get them some percentage of the way through the tasks or the things that they've got to complete. We then may build, or there'll be another software company that provides this that then we're able to kind of host in this enterprise app store to be able to go, oh, I want to be able to link this type of data to, another organization, and I need it to query these different aspects or whatever it may be. I'm going to click and grab that skill or plugin to help me complete and do that work. And I think there's going to be the ability for us to almost have a curated way to kind of look at how these different, again, going back to the change in the way we're working, there's going to be other aspects that are going to be there to help me in that, but not just in the pure kind of out of the box, because it's not going to have that enterprise kind of context or understanding. We're going to have to figure out how we marry those two things together and then build the experience around it.
Well, you'd mentioned the possibility of organizations training their own large language models.
My initial reaction is that this is maybe inaccessible, incredibly expensive, need a lot of compute, and it's more than just Terraform apply. You got to figure out how to do that. You need the data, and that maybe it's just the domain of the proud few that get to do it. Am I being too pessimistic?
I agree with you. I don't think you're being pessimistic. I think it goes back to that differentiation. Is it worth it? And what do we get? And is it worth it? I mean, to use something super simple, do we build, borrow, or partner? Maybe there's a case to be made in some instances where it does make sense to go build something. And maybe that changes over time with what comes with some of the innovations from either the open source side or the cost of some of these things being able to come down. The other side of it is I think there are so many possibilities where how do we leverage what exists from different providers? And maybe that is Azure OpenAI. Maybe it's something else, but that you really then are getting into significant fine tuning to kind of make this work in the way that you want to. And it's a different level of investment sort of as a part of it. What's right for your business and where you're at. And I think the majority makes sense with today's tech to use what's out there versus build your own. But I will tell you, we do have a couple of clients that are interested in doing this. And, we work through that strategic conversation with them around, well, is it build, buy, or partner to kind of get you where you need to be? Because of the speed we're talking about this, how do you make sure you're not doing this and then there's something that comes out in 3 months that you go, I don't know if it's worth it anymore.
Yeah, true. Before we even talk of custom LLMs of enterprises, just let's take a step back 3 months ago, right? So organizations were still, not clear whether to use the OpenAI versions of GPT models or to have fine-tuning of those models and so on and so forth, right? And then once the customers got a bit educated, they came to a conclusion that, fine-tuning all the time is not needed. I don't need to custom train my own models. I can use the retrieval augmented generation pattern and, do most of my tasks. 95% of my, chat with your data or kind of find insights with your data tasks can be done by the RAG pattern. So again, you need to do that trade-off, weigh your investments versus the ROI you are expecting. But that's a demand from clearly certain sections, governments, for example, defense sector, health and public care, where they would want to have, or medical sector for that matter, where they would want to have a very custom LLM trained for their purpose, for their usage. We might see an increasing trend, but then again, to what extent and to how much would be the demand for it, or how much would customers go to those kind of end results remains to be seen.
And as we've said, the field's moving really fast. What are you both most excited about in the near and long term?
For the near term, right, I'm pretty excited about the kind of possibilities this is going to open up for our clients, even for us as an enterprise, right? So all the different Copilot Studio announcements, or it's Microsoft Fabric going GA and marrying this data platform which is tailor made for the era of AI. So these announcements, they excite me tremendously, and just looking into the kind of possibilities of what it means for us as an enterprise, us as an SI, or for our clients, that excites me tremendously. And again, multi-modality. So generation of images and audios and videos. What scares me for the long term are two things. One is how this is going to be used, right? So for example, your creation of videos, would that sort of encourage the creation of deep fakes or your cyber crimes? Secondly is, because of this whole implosion of your huge computing powers and data centers, how sustainable this is going to be. Because we talk of, all these billions and trillions of parameters, hyperparameters, ever increasing, computing capabilities and computing powers. But then what does it mean to keep a data center running like that constantly 24/7, and with new data centers popping up for sort of bridging the ever growing demand between different SIs and clients? So how sustainable that is going to be, and how that would affect us in the long term. So it's a two-pronged, worry, but then it's a double-edged sword. I mean, we might come to a point where GPTs themselves are self-sustaining, Could be. So it is interesting. It remains to be seen how these challenges we battle them and we mitigate them.
Yeah, I also think with responsible AI, every organization, while they need to think about the policies and guidelines that they have in place, actually having principles is something that's really important. And one of our core principles from an organization perspective, and that we are very clear on, is around being overly transparent when it comes to AI. So, there was talk about Sales Copilot. We are an adopter of Sales Copilot. But when we started going through that adoption cycle, we realized this is actually generating, now it's not auto sending, but it is generating an email that then a salesperson is looking at and modifying slightly and then sending. Our privacy policy and us being really clear that AI actually auto generated that email, we needed to make a policy change, and we actually needed to do something that, many organizations kind of have a footer that goes on every email that says privacy policy, et cetera, et cetera. Avanade has never had that. What we've decided to do is for those people that are in Sales Copilot at the moment, we now have amended a footer so that when people are getting that email, they know. And that's kind of coming back through, we have this principle and we're trying to live and breathe these values around the things that we believe from responsible AI. And that's why I think for every organization, it's really important to not, you can run fast, but you need to also be thinking about and having all of these kind of guidelines and governance in place around it. And it's a really great place to be able to actually take these values as an organization that sometimes maybe just sort of sit on a website or are espoused in sort of certain meetings throughout the year. You can actually live and breathe those things through AI in a very unique way that actually empowers kind of the rest of the organization as well.
We also need to talk about the kind of governance that needs to be imposed, the kind of ethical, responsible AI practices that need to also be out there in the forefront. So it's not only about implementations, but also about the responsible usage of the AI and having a robust governance in place. It is your data governance, it is your AI models governance. So all of that also needs to be emphasized and talked about. So
what goes wrong if it's not?
Yeah, so there's one, very popular thing which we in Avanade Legal also do a lot, and which is called as indemnifying your generative AI results. So we at the end of all our Gen AI implementations or, the results which we give out, we always have a disclaimer that this is AI generated and please exercise due caution before you act on the suggestions or recommendations of AI. As more and more the AI models, the generative AI models get powerful, it becomes imperative that you have these kind of frameworks for the end users to be able to trust the outcomes of the AI models and to have that boundary where we recognize that it is still people first. So which is why Microsoft has very beautifully given the moniker CoPilot, which is like they are enabling you to do better, enabling you to be more productive. So that thin line between the fact that we still control the models, that is where the governance things comes in. And of course security around the data leakage, confidentiality, because imagine where finance sector start using LLMs, which is very discrete data about customers, PII data, same for healthcare, medical sector. So in that case, this kind of governance, confidentiality becomes even more significant. And which is why having this kind of, security, ethical use becomes even all the more important. Imagine a case where you have a medical bot. Now, how do I trust the advice given by that bot? Given my symptoms, hey, you might have pneumonia. There has to be some way for me to trust that. So it's not that every other company will be able to have their own model creation and put out there for the use of the end users. There has to be certain criteria by which you are productionalizing your models. Are they safe to use? Are they safe to interact with the end users? How do end users trust them? So there has to be this entire framework where your model is assessed for fairness, for ethical usage, for responsible usage before you make it available. So I think with the growing demand, these practices need to be more stringent and they need to be enforced.
And is there anywhere listeners can follow you both online?
So you can follow me on my LinkedIn handle, which is CompuBizPU, and also on my Twitter handle, which is @FuzzyMind1. It's it's a slightly funny moniker. Yeah. So on Twitter, I go by the name of @FuzzyMind1. I also have my own blog on Medium, medium.com, which is @AIGeek.
And you can just follow me on LinkedIn, and you can just find me with Aaron Reich.
Sounds great. We'll have links to all of the above in the show notes for people to follow up. Thank you both so much for taking the time to come on and share your work.
No, thank you. I very much enjoyed the conversation.
Thank you, Kyle.